We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It's Sunday. Sunday is always a tough day to do a podcast because during the week, or during the weekend, there isn't a lot or as much going on. We do have some things to talk about today, so that's good. And I have a number of emails, which makes it even more easy. Now, I still have this cold. It's getting better. I'm on antibiotics. I'm taking Mucinex. I've got a cough drop in my mouth. I've got tea right here. Moment to moment, I feel pretty good as long as I'm taking my medication. The only problem is when you start talking, then it starts roughing things up in your throat and you start to cough. Really kind of sucks when you do what I do and you have this problem. I don't get colds very often, but when I do, they hit me pretty hard. A lot of people have been worried about me. I will tell you this, I have my COVID shot, my RSV shot, my flu shot, and I'm on antibiotics now. There ain't much more I can do than what I've done. So we'll push through this. We'll do it. People say, why do you keep doing it if you've got a cold? Well, it's because I'm not a bitch. This is what I've done all my life. And those times that I've been sick, you just kind of push through it. And I know I can do it, so I'm going to fucking do it. We got plenty of stuff to talk about. I got emails to catch up on, so let's get to that shit. But actually, before we get to the emails, there's a couple of things I wanted to bring up. We now know that George Santos, of course, has been expelled. Prior to being expelled, he said he was going to name names and wreak all kinds of havoc on the Republican caucus in the House, tell everybody about their criminality and perversions. And then as he got closer to the expulsion, he kind of quieted down. And I thought, maybe he got a talking to by the powers that be and said, you probably don't want to do that. And that may have happened. But now that he's expelled, he's talking some shit. He's talking about doing some things on Monday, tomorrow. He's talking about Lawler and Matt Gaetz and a bunch of people doing some crazy shit. So this could be fun. This could be entertaining. We'll see if he comes out with any evidence and files any complaints or whatever the fuck he's going to do. But suffice to say, George Santos' life henceforth not going to be good. He's no longer in the House of Representatives. He's not going to benefit from all the benefits of being in the House. He wanted the health care. He wanted the pension. He's not getting any of those things. He wasn't there long enough to get it. So he's kind of fucked. And then he's got to go on trial and he'll probably go to jail. He's got like 23 counts against him. This is not looking good. Now, somebody suggested he might be a flight risk. I don't think Donald Trump is because he's got bigger issues to deal with and he'd have to get through the Secret Service. But Georgie, I hope they got his passport because I could see him going back down to Argentina and starting up his career as a cross-dressing entertainer. You might as well. You're fucking done here in this country. And if you stay here, of course, you're fucking going to jail. So why would you do that? We'll see what happens. Now, there's something else I wanted to bring up. I have to tell you, at one point, the dumbest thing I think I ever saw on Fox News was this debate between Gavin Newsom and Ron DeSantis. There was no point in doing it. There was no reason to do it. Ron DeSantis had nothing to gain and everything to lose. And of course, when it was all said and done, he lost everything. He was embarrassed. He looked foolish. But not just Ron DeSantis. It was also Sean Hannity, who was the alleged moderator, and Fox News itself. They looked absolutely stupid doing this. It was 2 against 1 or 3 against 1, and Gavin Newsom kicked all their asses. Now, I thought that was the dumbest thing ever to be on Fox News until I saw a clip, I believe on TikTok yesterday, actually, and it was interesting. Jesse Waters was in this clip. He's the guy that took over for Tucker Carlson He's basically Tucker Carlson light, only dumber. And he was talking about the Biden crime family. Well, that's nothing new. We've heard them talk about this a lot. There is no evidence. There is nothing. So in doing this part of his show, he wanted some credibility. So he brought in an expert guest. You know who he brought in? He brought in Sammy the Bull Gravano, for Christ's sake. Here's an old, worn out, beat up mafia guy who was the underboss to John Gotti, who's dead, by the way. And he was talking to him about the crime family with Joe Biden. Now, he gave no evidence. He was just talking about how badly he feels for the country and how mad he is at Joe Biden. But Jesus Christ, how lame do you have to be to drag this clown in? I see him on TikTok now and again, and the guy's just not all there. I mean, this guy is an acknowledged serial killer. He's been in jail for multiple years. He got out, he got a second break, and then he went back in because he fucked up. This is not a bright man. This is not a man that you can trust, that is honest about anything. And that's the best that Fox News could come up with as an expert guest about the Biden crime family. That easily is the stupidest thing I've seen on Fox News. All right, as I said, I have some emails to talk about. Oh, I want to mention a couple other things. I have that P.O. box, and I'm not suggesting anybody send me anything, but from time to time, I do get some things. Somebody, and I don't know who it is because there was no name on it, sent me an Amazon gift card for $25. Don't know who it was. Send me an email at rationalboomer@gmail.com. Tell me who you are, but thank you very much. It's not necessary. You don't have to send me anything. I appreciate it, but you don't have to send me anything. And then there was another one that came from Minnesota, and it came from a woman by the name of Annie Young. Annie Young Arts is the name of her website. She's an artist in the southern suburbs of Minnesota. I don't know that I'd ever talked to her, but I may have. But she sent me, actually, hold on a second. I'll grab it. He sent me this. See if you can see it. Oh, I'll pull it back. Okay. She sent me this. She's a painter. Annie Young Arts. And then there's something on the back. Talks about occupation of a mother's heart that my wife appreciated. Anyway, this woman is a great artist. I think some of her stuff is hanging in the airport here in Minneapolis, St. Paul. But she's a blind artist, which is intriguing, which is very intriguing. And I wanted to thank her for sending that. That's much appreciated. I am impressed. I went to her website, and you should too. Annie Young Arts, ANNIE youngarts.com. And you'll see some amazing shit. She's very talented and obviously a very thoughtful woman. So thank you, Annie Young, at annieyoungarts.com. Anyway, okay, now we'll get to the emails. First one says, "Hi, Mike. I discovered you fairly recently and enjoy your TikToks and podcast. I appreciate the content and find comfort in knowing that there are so many like-minded people out there. A boomer myself, 1958, I too have had to put up with a lot of people I went to high school with who are diehard T-rumps, humpers. Mind you, these were the burnouts, free spirits, and hippies. I know people change over time, but what the fuck? I blocked several because of their radical views and hate speech. Many of them say they are all for a woman's right to choose, but still won't vote for a Democrat. It's beyond my comprehension. I have a question regarding doxing. How do these assholes get all the personal information about their targets? They seem to find phone numbers and addresses quite easily. They even get info about their relatives. How the hell does this happen?" Well, I guess there's a lot of way I've never went out of my way to try to dox anybody, and I wouldn't, because I think that's pretty chicken shit. But with Google, you can find out a lot of things. I've had people contact me before that were a little weird, and I was able to dig some things out of them with Google, trying to just put some things together. I think there is some software like LexisNexis or something. I don't even know what that is, but there's ways you can find this out. And then you've got um, uh, guys on TikTok like Tizzy. He's got a big audience, and he can just put a picture up, and somebody will know who that guy or gal is, and then let him know. It is a chicken shit thing to do. I mean, we're here on the internet, and we're here on TikTok in the podcast. And let's be honest, this isn't real life. This isn't real life at all. I mean, it's real in the sense of what I'm saying and what you're hearing and what you're talking back to me about. But this is kind of a different world here. To involve other people's family members and all that sort of shit is just bullshit. I've never had a problem with it, but frankly, because I don't work for anybody and I'm not exactly embarrassed by what I do, good luck with that. It's not going to work with me. Moving on, she says, I wonder if I'm missing something because I'm in Illinois, or is there more that DNC Chair Jamie Harrison could be doing to get the message out about what Biden has been doing for the past 3 years? There are so many things we should be bragging about, and I hear nothing. One thing that's happening is that more Latinos, Hispanics than ever are leaning toward Trump. They hear him and the GQP calling the Dems socialist. This sparks fears in those who have fled or have family that fled socialist regimes. Dems need to fight this narrative. They also ignore Latinos, Hispanics until it gets close to election day, if they reach out to them at all. Well, there's something to be said for that. There's a lot of problems with the Democrats in terms of messaging. There's a lot of problems with how they deal with people and how they run their elections. I've said that all along. They get enough heat about it, you'd think they'd change that up, but apparently not. The thing about it is, with the socialist stuff, the fact is the Republicans keep talking about this socialism shit, and it's inaccurate. These people don't know what socialism is. They don't know what communism is. They lump them together, and it's fucking ridiculous. You almost have to train these people to understand what the word actually means. I mean, there is some socialistic aspects to our country, Social Security, fire department, the school system. There is socialism in this country. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's an important thing. A lot of people wouldn't survive in this country without some socialism mixed in. But what they've done is they've taken these Trumplafucks and they do what they always do. They scare them with, oh, if it's socialism, then it's communism. And what these people fled in terms of socialism isn't quite what it's made out to be. It's not really socialism. What they're dealing with is dictators. And dictators don't necessarily portray what socialism is. It is a matter of education. We've got to tell people what's up, and we've got to get them to understand. But that's one of the toughest things to do in this country. I mean, we have it at another level. We've got Republicans constantly telling us that our economy sucks, but that's not true. Gas prices coming down, inflation coming down, manufacturing is up, wages are up, unemployment is down. 14 million jobs created by Joe Biden in 3 years. Where's the bad economy? And then we heard earlier today, yesterday actually, that because things are cooling off with our economy, that it sounds like the Fed may be bringing down interest rates, maybe up to 6 times in 2024. Now, if that happens, that's going to be a big deal for the economy. and it's going to be a big deal for the Democrats, and it's going to hurt the Republicans immensely. But again, if you talk to the average idiot on the street, they're going to tell you, oh, the economy's bad. Well, I'd like to have them show me where it's bad. It's not fucking bad. It's actually pretty good. It's far better than it was when Donald Trump was in office. When he left office, he pretty much crashed the economy. Now they'll say, well, that was because of COVID. It's not his fault. Now we say, oh, yeah, it is. The fact that Donald Trump did nothing about COVID is what put us in the situation we were in. If he had been a normal president and done the things he needed to do to protect the people of this country, we wouldn't have had the shutdowns. We wouldn't have had 1 million people dying. So you could hang that bad economy on Donald Trump for his negligence. And they finish up this email by saying, during the podcast with Fred, you guys were wondering about the Secret Service. It's under the Department of Homeland Security. Thank you. Well, thank you for letting me vent and for reading my email. Sorry it's so long. By the way, Old Soul rocks. Peg, HM, from South Suburban Chicago. Thank you, Peg. All right, next one. Hello, Boomer. Really digging your comments lately. You've got a pretty good batting average, as a lot of what you predicted is happening. Today is pretty crazy. Santos is expelled and is going out to rat, and it has been revealed that Mikey in the Closet Johnson wrote a foreword on a book promoting Pizzagate and other bullshit conspiracy theories. I'm wondering how desperate the Republicans are going to get. They hold the majority in the House, and I fear they're going to try to manipulate or even sabotage the 2024 elections. They've so much as said elections don't work and other means are needed. I'm concerned about just what they have planned and what they will do to keep power. Thanks for all you do, Z-Man. Well, I'll put it to you this way. Think of all the things that the Republicans have done in the last 3 years. Not one of them have worked. They're incompetent. They are inept. And their majority in the House is slipping. Matt Gaetz was even suggesting they may even lose the majority. There's one man, I don't recall his name, but he accepted a job as a president of a college. We don't know when he's going to leave. He's a Republican. George Santos is leaving, obviously gone now. Kevin McCarthy is talking about leaving before Christmas. So that margin of 4 seats is down to 1. Now, if they have the special election for George Santos and a Democrat wins, now it's even. I don't know that the Republicans have the strength to do much. They're pretty much on the run, and they don't really have much power to do anything. Oh, sure, they'll try, but they really don't have much they can do. Over the next year, things are going to go badly for the Republicans. They're going to be spending more time trying to save their asses as opposed to try to fuck with the election. I'm not saying they won't try, but they don't have a real good batting average as being effective. They are incompetent. They are inept. And I'm not as worried about them as I was, say, in 2020. They had some power then. They've got no power. They're weak as fuck. And they're scurrying around like chickens with their heads cut off. They're not in a position to make good choices or good decisions. And everywhere they turn, somebody rubs it in their face, like Hunter Biden. We're going to subpoena Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden says, sure, but I got to do it in public. And they stop the whole concept. Hunter Biden played the Republicans in that situation. And they thought that they had them dead to rights. I'm not worried about the Republicans at this point. They're going to have all they can handle to just keep alive and to even show up in 2024. All right. Next one. Hi, Mike. I watched the vote to expel George Sanders. That's an old actor. George Santos live. I was watching the comments section of the live stream, and I wish I didn't. The number of comments asking, what did he do? How can they do this if he wasn't charged? Saying it was a vote to remove Biden, saying they needed to investigate every yes vote, and many more. However, one comment was gold. They said that George Santos should have brought a motion to vacate the chair before the vote. That would have been hilarious. I could see MAGA still pulling a motion to vacate because they kicked out Santos. As for George, all I've got to say is, nah, 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 hey, hey, goodbye. Yeah, there's a lot of games they probably could have played, but the Republicans wanted him out of there more than the Democrats. Democrats didn't care. I think he's still going to pull some shit. He's going to expose some people, whether it will get traction or not. I don't know. But the people who said he hasn't even been charged yet. Yeah, he has been charged with 23 counts. He hasn't been convicted yet, but that's just a matter of time. Says you were talking about the gaffe by Chuck. I'm older than chocolate chip cookies, Grassley. I think he said exactly what he meant. Someone realized after the fact that it sounded really bad and is trying to cover. Personally, I'd love to see him charged. I want his legacy to be one of a criminal and not a celebrated politician. My main disappointment will be that Kim Reynolds will get to name his replacement. Last speculation I heard was that she might name his grandson as his replacement and try to use his grandfather's name recognition to help the Republicans keep the seat. That's distinctly possible. Yeah, he was in the middle of this whole attempt to overthrow the country. He does need to be indicted at some point. She goes on to say, we keep talking about it now. This actually, I think this is Eric. Excuse me. As I say, I got this cold. I start talking and shit goes awry. We keep talking about it, but now will the judge finally level some serious sanctions against Trump for violating his gag order? I would hope so. Like I said before, getting the gag order reinstated is nice, but if there is no accountability, who gives a fuck? Some people say Trump wants to be jailed, but I don't think so. I don't either. His ego couldn't handle 24 hours in the jail cell. It would probably break him more than losing his money. If anyone else acted like he did, they would get major fines and probably jail time. I've heard that in New York, a contempt charge could carry up to a year in jail. How about Judge Engeron sentencing him to a year in jail or until he apologizes, whichever comes first? I wonder which would happen first. Donald Trump's not apologizing for anything. They asked him if he'd ever asked for forgiveness from God, and he said, I don't have anything he needs to forgive. So Donald Trump is certainly not going to apologize. Goes on. Lastly, I saw that Texas has lost 2 federal appeals this week. They were ordered to remove the barriers they put in the Rio Grande, and they lost their appeal trying to stop Border Patrol agents from cutting the razor wire that Abbott had authorized on the barriers. Democrats need to keep pushing stories like this, not only in Texas, but nationally. We need to control the Senate so we can keep putting qualified judges on the bench to stop rogue governors from doing whatever they want to abuse human rights. Thanks, Eric. That is Eric from Iowa. Thank you, Eric. Next up, Mike, I'm writing to state my disagreement with you and almost everyone else in the media appearing to not be concerned that Sandra Day O'Connor was the 5th vote in the 2000 Bush v. Gore decision. It is my understanding that there is nothing in the Constitution that allows the Supreme Court to stop a state from counting votes in a presidential election. If I'm wrong, I apologize and let me know what I may have overlooked. I do believe that it could be argued that the decision seriously hurt our nation It contributed to the citizenry losing respect for our election systems. I know that it did me. It also contributed to the current deep divisions between our two main political parties, to Trump being elected in 2016, and it encouraged Trump to make up his own rules as to how to respond to losing his election in 2020. This in no way is me saying that Trump is not fully responsible for his actions. I'm just saying that with all 5 of those justices should be held responsible for these results, and each should go down in history for harming our country. What are your thoughts? Thank you for making it possible to have these painful discussions. Think that it is that I think that is why you have such a faithful following. D. I get what you're saying. Sandra Day O'Connor was a conservative judge. There's no question about it. And she was part and parcel to that Bush v. Gore thing. And that was kind of a travesty. I'll grant you that. Did she do wrong in that decision? I don't know, to be perfectly honest with you. Back when that happened, I didn't know much about politics. I wasn't involved in politics. I didn't really care either way, whether it be Bush or Gore. Wasn't a big fan of Gore's anyway. And I certainly wasn't a big fan of Bush's. I just, at that point, I wasn't really all that involved in it. But I think you make a good point. I think if we believe that our Supreme Court has been tainted just recently, I think we may have run into a lot of problems in history in the Supreme Court. I don't think we've always got fair decisions. Did Gore get treated fairly in that situation? I don't think so. And did it lead to other bad things? Well, certainly it could have. And it may have been part of, indirectly, to what Trump did. And that's why it's important we straighten this shit out now, because as much as Trump did what he did when he was president and what he's done with the Supreme Court, that's not suggesting it can't happen again. In fact, if he gets away with this shit, it will happen again. And it could be a Republican or it could be a Democrat. Who the fuck knows? The only thing I will say about Sandra Day O'Connor is this. She was a conservative. I don't agree with her, but she wasn't incompetent and she wasn't a fool like some of the people we have in the court now. She did a decent job when she was there. She was the first woman ever appointed to the Supreme Court. I can't tell you I'm in love with her or that I really appreciate everything she did, because I don't. Frankly, I don't know as much as I should know about Sandra Day O'Connor, because that was a time when I wasn't as focused on the Supreme Court and politics in general. But you make a good point. It's noted, and I don't disagree with you. You probably are right on this one. So I'm not even going to try to argue the fact. Thank you. Next one starts out, hi, Mike, just read that so-called code of ethics the Supreme Court dreamt up. One word stands out with this is the use of the word should. I wonder if they meant to use the word as a norm. If so, it's obvious that norms don't carry the weight they used to in politics, as Trump has broke most all norms, and he has no use for norms or the law for that matter. I suggest if a blue wave happens in 2024, the governing bodies should rewrite the code using the words will or shall. Point taken, and I don't disagree with you. When we're talking about laws or codes of ethics, they shouldn't be suggestions. They should be hard and fast, and they should be rules that have to be followed. And if they're not followed, there should be some accountability for it. I agree with you. On a side note, my wife and I have had the same cold you're having. Ours has lasted a month now. I had it so bad I needed to go to my doctor and diagnose me with bronchitis. I ended up on an antibiotic, an inhaler, and Mucinex. I swear we both had RSV. You sound like you have the same thing. I asked our doctor, if we should get the vaccine, and she said, well, it wouldn't hurt. So last Friday, we got the RSV vaccine. Take care of yourself, as we need your voice to be heard. I'm not only an old soul, I'm an old boomer, 74. Phil, I'll tell you this. Before I ever got this cold, I got the COVID shot, the update. I got RSV and I got the flu shot. And when I went back in, she didn't say it was bronchitis, but she did give me an antibiotic. And I'm hoping against hope that that is the trick. And that's what'll fix this thing, because it's really more annoying than anything. And it's making my life difficult trying to do these podcasts. TikToks aren't so bad because I can usually do 2 or 3 minutes without breaking out into a coughing jag, but it's much harder when you're doing half-hour segments and trying to keep your cool. I can't do it without coughing because of this fucking cold. And it's funny, there's a lot of people I know that have this cold, and they do have it for weeks or a month or something like that. And I think I told you before, I believe I got it from my granddaughter. Last time I saw her a couple of days ago, she still had the cough. So I called my son. I said, look, man, I went in, they put me on antibiotics. Our little girl has that cold. She's still coughing. She's dealing with it just fine. But maybe you should bring her in and see if she doesn't need some antibiotics too. I hate to see her sick. It doesn't slow her down. It doesn't stop her from talking. I guess when you're younger, these kinds of things don't have as much impact as when you get old. But still, I don't want to see her sick. And it's a fucked up thing to be able to or have to deal with this for a month or a month and a half and that sort of thing. My brother had it, saw him today. He said he just got over it after a month. So the whole thing is fucking annoying and tiring. I don't like getting sick. And fortunately, I don't get sick too often. But when I do, it's a pain in the ass. And I appreciate you hanging with me here in spite of my disability in my ability to talk and having to cough now and again. Um, just hang with me here. I'll get through this and we'll get back to normal as soon as possible. All right. We will take a quick break and we will be right back. You know, it's a funny thing about this cold thing. As I said, I don't get colds that often anymore. You know, what's weird is that all the time we had to wear masks, I didn't get any kind of cold at all. So for those folks that think masks don't work, I disagree. I just hate wearing masks. Otherwise, I would all the time. But when I was a little kid, I was I had perpetual colds. Always had a cold. Always had runny noses. It got to the point where I had to train myself to breathe through my nose again because I had a cold so often. And it was a funny thing. My father was a salesman, so talking was part of his business. And he had 4 kids, and one or all of them would get colds. And when he would get the cold, he would get angry at us because we gave him a cold, and it would hinder his effort to make a living. And you know, my father wasn't the nicest guy in the world, and he would say some horrible things to his kids. It was fucking ridiculous, and that's why when I get a cold or something like this and I get it from somebody else, or I think I got it from somebody else, I'm never going to get angry about that. It just fucking happens in this world. Somebody gets a cold, somebody else gets a cold. It's something we have to deal with. It's nobody's fault. Nobody wants a fucking cold, and nobody wants to spread the cold. It's just the nature of the beast. So, like I said with my granddaughter, I think I got it from her. But I'll be perfectly honest with you. If that little girl had Ebola, I'd still hug and kiss her. So no blame placed. All right, moving on. Um, Donald Trump had a bad day in court yesterday. Actually, in 2 courts. We'll talk about this first one. Apparently, Donald Trump is not going to be immune from prosecution in his election interference case in Washington, D.C. Federal judge ruled Friday, knocking down the Republicans' bid to derail the case, charging him with plotting the overturn of the 2020 presidential election. U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan's decision tees up a legal fight over the scope of presidential power that could ultimately reach the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, Trump denied any wrongdoing in the case, of course. He's expected to quickly appeal to fight what his lawyers have characterized as an unsettled legal question. But the fact is, he went into Judge Chutkan and basically said, I was president, I have immunity. And Judge Chutkan quickly pointed out, well, immunity for a president only is for a sitting president, not a former president. As a former president, you're now nothing more than a citizen. And apparently Donnie doesn't like that decision. Unfortunately, constitutionally speaking, it's accurate. Now, in a ruling, Chutkan said former presidents enjoy no special conditions on their federal criminal liability. Defendants may be subject to federal investigation, indictment, prosecution, conviction, and punishment for any criminal acts undertaken while in office. And if you remember, Mitch McConnell said as much. Remember when they were trying to impeach him and the Senate let him go. They found him innocent or whatever the fuck they did. They didn't convict him. Mitch McConnell very specifically said after that happened that doesn't mean he wouldn't have to deal with regular prosecution when he is no longer president, that he could be prosecuted and convicted as a former president. Mitch McConnell said that. Mueller said that. So this isn't a surprise to anybody. This is just something Donald Trump and his people are trying to pull out of their ass to try to get some traction, and it ain't working. Now, Trump's legal team had argued that the case, which is scheduled to go to trial in March, should be dismissed because the 2024 Republican presidential primary frontrunner is shielded from prosecution for actions he took while fulfilling his duties as president. Well, that makes sense. So any serial killer who's going to go on trial and wants to avoid going on trial, all he has to do is say, I'm running for president. Yeah, that's not how it works. They asserted that the actions detailed in the indictment, including pressing state officials on the administration of elections, cut to the core of Trump's responsibilities as the commander-in-chief. The Supreme Court has held that presidents are immune from civil liability for actions related to their official duties, but the justices have never grappled with the question of whether that immunity extends to criminal prosecution. Special counsel Jack Smith's team has said there's nothing in the Constitution or in court precedent to support the idea that a former president cannot be prosecuted for criminal conduct committed while he's in the White House. I mean, if that were the case, a sitting president could commit multiple murders and theft and just get away with it because by virtue of him being or her being president of the United States. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it's a ridiculous argument. She went on to say the defendant is not above the law. He is subject to the federal criminal laws like more than 330 million other Americans, including members of Congress, federal judges, and everyday citizens. Now, it's in one of the 4 criminal cases Trump is facing while he seeks to reclaim the White House in 2024. Smith has separately charged Trump in Florida with illegally hoarding classified documents, of course. Trump is also charged in Georgia with conspiring to overturn his election loss to President Joe Biden, and he faces charges in New York related to the hush money payments made during the 2016 election campaign. Now, it's interesting. Yesterday as well, Donald Trump's lawyers made a motion in Georgia to delay the trial there because he's president or was president and he's running for president, so he should be treated special. They made that motion. Now, no decision has been made on that motion, but Judge McAfee did ask a question, and I think it was something that Donald Trump's team did not want to answer, but they did answer, and it's very telling. The judge said, so you don't think he should be tried because he's running for re-election. And they said, yes, that's right. So then he goes on to ask, well, if he should win the election, can he be tried after the election? And they said, well, according to the Constitution, which isn't necessarily true, no, you couldn't. So then the judge said, so you're telling me if he wins the presidency, that he will not be able to be tried on any of these criminal activities until 2029. And the lawyer reluctantly said, yeah, that's right. Well, that's ridiculous. And it goes to another quote you've often heard: justice delayed is justice denied. Now, what Judge McAfee hasn't given a ruling yet on this delay of this particular case, I think it's safe to say that Donald Trump's record on appeals and motions and stuff has been, well, it's been goose eggs for him. He's not going to get this one either. They are going to try to determine when this case will start. Now, Fani Willis has suggested August, which may very well take it past the election, depending on how many defendants there are. There are 4 defendants that have cut deals. I think they're expecting more of them to cut deals, maybe as many as 12 more, which would mean 16, leaving the top 3 that aren't going to get deals: Giuliani, Meadows, and Trump. But depending on how many defendants are in the case will determine how long this case goes. So if you've got a witness up there, a defense witness, or a prosecution witness for that matter, if you've got 5 defendants, then each lawyer for each defendant is going to have to question this person, and it's going to extend how long this takes. And that's maybe why Fani Willis is talking about it going beyond the election, because there may be so many defendants. Now, this is probably why she's offered deals to everybody but the top 3. I think her goal is to get the top 3 in the trial and try them all together. And then that would be more reasonable with 3 defendants. And I think ultimately she will do that. But I have to wonder if Judge McAfee isn't thinking about this. If what the lawyer said, that Donald Trump could not be tried after he became president, which isn't going to happen, but it's something to consider, if he might want to move this up. Now, Fani Willis said, let's start in August. We give everybody who wants to cut deals till the middle of June. If they don't cut a deal by middle of June, they're going on trial too. And I would presume we will see a mad rush to people wanting to cut deals before June. It'll be interesting to see how McAfee responds to this. They're not going to allow him to delay it till 2025 or whenever the fuck they want to do it. That's just not going to happen. There's no precedence for it. There's no law that suggests this is a good idea. Donald Trump continually wants to get special treatment because he was a president, but nowhere in the Constitution or in law says a former president gets any special arrangement just by virtue of what they once were. It's absolutely ridiculous to ask, but it's all they've got to ask. So they're trying to throw shit against the wall and hope to God they come up with something. I want to talk about George Santos a little bit. He's going to be interesting here. Hours after more than 300 members of the House of Representatives booted Representative Georgie Santos from Congress, now he's starting to pick fights. I honestly thought he'd go away quietly like Madison Cawthorn, but apparently he's a little bitchy and he's a little unhappy. And that's understandable, in spite of the fact that he's an absolute fucking criminal and should have been booted months ago. As Friday was nearing midnight, Santos called out Representative Nicole Maliotakis, who appeared on a news programming explaining why she voted to get rid of the accused law-breaking lawmaker. In a video clip posted to her Twitter account, Maliotakis said that Santos used his campaign funds for personal benefit. He cited Botox, a porn website, luxury goods like Ferragamo and Hermes as being too much to excuse. I wonder what's just enough to excuse. If he shopped on Amazon instead. She said the House took action and removed him. And speaking for members who saw the expulsion, we believe we've seen enough. He does not merit to serve in this body, and his constituents deserve better. Now, Santos was the sixth member of the House ever to be expelled, and the first in more than 2 decades called out his colleagues. Yeah, he's not happy. He's a little bitchy. And he started talking already. It sounds like Monday some things are going to pop, but he said, let's talk about hypocrisy, he wrote. Can someone ask Nicole Malio stock tips? When did she become a savant in stock trading? He then went so far to accuse the politician of committing insider trading and compared her supposed success in the stock market to former Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband, who this summer bought millions of dollars worth of Apple and Microsoft stock. The signature bank trades she did reeks of insider trading, much like Paul Pelosi's every trade, wrote Santos. Nicole is in it for herself. Just look at her record and it speaks for herself. Nicole Malio Stock Tips is a dirty, dishonorable swamp creature selling the American people down a river for her own benefit. Well, that's starting to get a little bitchy, isn't it? He continued, at N. Maliotakis, the difference between you and I is that I don't live in denial. I'm a proud gay man and I'm not afraid to say it. Wink emoji. Oh, trying to pull her out of the closet. Minutes later, he then posted his plans to mete out revenge. On Monday, I'll be filing an official complaint with the Office of Congressional Ethics against at N. Maliotakis regarding her questionable stock trading since joining the Ways and Means Committee this Congress. The follow-up tweet reads, before joining the committee, the congressman didn't have an active trading habit or a high-volume stake. The question is, what set of information is she trading? Well, that's interesting. And there was talk of him outing Representative Lawler, who actually stood up for him for a little bit. But, you know, when you get to this point, it's burn every bridge and scorch the entire earth. Something about Matt Gaetz, too. Something I heard that was a little weird. I'm not even going to repeat it because I don't know that it's true. I heard it on TikTok, and I don't know that it's true. I'd have to check that before I'd go into it. But just Google it and you'll find out something interesting. Won't be surprising with Matt Gaetz, given his history. All right, with the Iowa Republican Party caucus is still looming and polls not looking good, the chances of Ron DeSantis catching the frontrunner Donald Trump have all but disappeared, and at least one campaign insider is already waving the white flag. I told you, once he did this debate, his political career is over. DeSantis, who attempted to shore up his floundering campaign in the debate with Gavin Newsom on Thursday night, has not seen any bumps in the polls after multiple Republican debates, which Trump avoided, and after spending millions on a campaign that has gone nowhere. Ron DeSantis never had a good showing in any debate he's ever fucking done, because he's weird, because he's awkward, because he's just strange. Now, adding to his problems, former Governor Nikki Haley has moved into the number 2 spot of GOP nominees, trying to wrest the mantle away from Trump, and this week landed the backing, of course, of Charles Koch, formerly of the Koch brothers, until one of them died mercifully. Now, Nikki Haley is a different deal. People are gravitating to Nikki Haley like they gravitated to Ron DeSantis. When Donald Trump started getting the baggage, everybody said, We got to find somebody else. And then Ron DeSantis started talking like Donald Trump, and they said, oh, yeah, there's our guy. There's that guy. Let's hug him. Let's go. They didn't bother to look into his background, vet him at all, or try to get a sense of who he was. They just grabbed the first guy that sounded like Trump. And in retrospect, they made a foolish choice because Ron DeSantis isn't going anywhere. He isn't going to be the nominee. Like Gavin Newsom said to Ron DeSantis in the debate, we have one thing in common. Neither one of us will be the nominee for our party for president in 2024. And he's absolutely right about that. But people are looking at Nikki Haley, and I presume there might be some independents looking at her too, thinking, well, she's a normal one. She's a normal Republican. But what you have to remember about Nikki Haley is that Nikki Haley, prior to this time, was a full-on Trump humper. She was in his administration. She was the ambassador to the UN. She supported Donald Trump every inch of the way. And if you remember in the debate, somebody asked the question, raise your hand if you would vote for Donald Trump if he was the nominee and convicted of a crime. She raised her hand. She was one of the fucking goofballs that raised her hand. So as much as she might be trying to look normal now, she is not. She is just as bad as all the rest. And thankfully, I don't see any Republican having a chance winning in 2024. There is just nothing in the works that would suggest they'd gain any kind of ground, they'd gain any support or votes. Everything that's going on is hurting them. They'd have to come back in the next year with some amazing shit, and there is nothing but negative in the future of the Republican Party at this point. Now, according to a report from the Washington Post, the hits to the DeSantis campaign just keep on coming. And as far as some campaign staffers are concerned, it's over. I mean, his own people are saying, fuck this, it's done. Now, with the Post reporting that DeSantis campaign officials are facing a gloomy future, the insider admitted people increasingly think it's over. It's a dumpster fire. Now, I'll remind you, not to say I told you so, but I told you so. There was a time when a lot of people were worried, oh, Ron DeSantis is worse than Trump, which isn't true. He's just as bad, but he's not worse. He's going to be the nominee. I've heard people say that. He's going to be the nominee. And I said, no, he'll never be the nominee. He's a horrible politician, and he will be exposed for what he is. And now here we are. The report notes that the loss of Koch support, which had backed the Florida governor's bid, was a devastating blow in multiple ways, including a report from the Koch flagship Americans for Prosperity that there was little evidence Trump voters would flock to his side if the former president dropped out for health or legal reasons. And let's be honest, any of these people currently, Nikki Haley included, they know they can't beat him in votes. They're all way behind. They're just hoping something happens to Donald Trump where he can no longer be in the primary or the ultimate general election. And I've said all along, I don't think that he'll make it to the to get the nomination because of all the shit hanging over his head. I can't give you a specific reason why it's going to happen, but you can't have this much hanging over the head of a 78-year-old man who's mentally sick anyway and expect that's going to work. So this Koch brother is hoping against hope and betting that Donald Trump will drop out, because unless Donald Trump drops out, Nikki Haley doesn't have any kind of chance. And even if Nikki Haley becomes the nominee, she can't come close to Joe Biden. Adding to that, there are growing reports of finger pointing and backstabbing in the DeSantis camp, with the Post reporting DeSantis and some of his advisors have criticized Never Back Down, the primary super PAC supporting him, according to several people familiar with the comments. Never Back Down officials have expressed their own concerns. CEO Chris Jankowski quit last week while saying his job had become untenable and alluding to problems well beyond a difference of strategic opinion. In what could be taken as a backhand compliment, one diehard DeSantis support said a decent showing in Iowa could help keep the campaign afloat. which is good, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen. And so, what the fuck? Ron DeSantis is done. Gavin Newsom put the final nail in the coffin. I don't know why anybody would even consider supporting him, because he doesn't have a prayer. Even if the guy got to be a nominee, he'd be exposed for his weird and awkwardness, and he doesn't have a prayer. Now, moving on. What do we got next? Oh, Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House. He said Saturday that he believes Republicans have the support needed to formalize their impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden, although there is no evidence of the president's wrongdoing at the moment. Okay, Mike, do it. Put it up for a vote. Why haven't you put it up for a vote before now? Because you don't have the fucking votes, and you're afraid you're going to be embarrassed, which you will be embarrassed. But now he's talking big. I don't know what's up with Mike Johnson, but I love to see him put it up for a vote. It's just about the inquiry. It's not about impeaching Joe Biden. They wouldn't get to impeaching Joe Biden till the election period anyway, and maybe that's what they're hoping for. But none of it's going to work. Everything they try fails miserably, even with the Hunter Biden and the testimony they want to get from him. They get embarrassed at every turn. Now, you want to do some more? Cool. Let's do it. Let's put it up for a vote. Let's see you do inquiry. Let's see you waste a bunch of money and time and accomplish nothing like you've done up to this point. Now, of course, House Republicans have been trying to dig up dirt on Biden for months. Johnson said that holding a floor vote to approve the inquiry would give them more investigatory power. So fucking do it. Now, asked whether he had the votes during an appearance on Fox News, Johnson replied, "Yeah, well, I believe I will." That's funny, because when Nancy Pelosi was Speaker of the House, she never said, "Yeah, I believe we will." She never took a vote unless she knew for sure that she's going to win. You may want to think about that, Mike Johnson, because you're about to look stupid. He added, "I suspect no Democrats will assist in this effort, but they should." Really? You think Democrats should help you impeach a president in a situation where you have no evidence? Why would Democrats help you anyway? This is the funny thing about Republicans. Ever since Joe Biden's been in office, everything has been voted on down party lines. Democrats and Republicans. Republicans never made any effort to help Republicans or in anything, whether it be infrastructure, COVID relief bill. They didn't do anything. They take credit after the fact, but they didn't help. Now, when they're trying to vote in a Speaker of the House, they're mad because the Democrats didn't help them out. Why should we help you out, especially to do something that's destructive with this country, trying to take down a president who doesn't have anything going against him? All your claims are old and tired and have no substance. You have no evidence, and you want the Democrats to help you. Sorry, bitch, that ain't the way it works. Now, Republican lawmakers leaving a closed-door conference Friday told reporters that the vote could come as early as next week. Want to bet? I hope they do it, because they will fail. And, them saying it could come as early as next week is akin to Donald Trump saying, "Oh, yeah, that health plan coming in 2 weeks." They've got to double down, but they always have to back off of it because they're always wrong. Now, appearing alongside Representative Elise Stefanik on Fox and Friends, Johnson called that both of them had served on former President Donald Trump's defense team when he was impeached over allegations that he abused the power of his office and obstructed justice, and again when he was impeached for trying to stage a coup. Well, but the fact is that happened. You kept telling us that the Mueller report totally exonerated Donald Trump, but in that Mueller report, there was 10 cases of Donald Trump obstructing justice. So it was justified that he was impeached for saying. Johnson said this is very different with Joe Biden. Republicans have accused Biden of using his time in the vice president's office to enrich his family, including his son Hunter Biden, but have not been able to produce evidence. The party's far-right flank has agitated for Joe Biden's impeachment, pressuring then Speaker Kevin McCarthy into launching an impeachment inquiry back in September before McCarthy's ouster. Now, at the time, McCarthy claimed that his colleagues had uncovered a culture of corruption. The White House labeled the effort extreme politics at its worst. Now, they kept talking about how bad it is. They keep talking about how they're going to bring evidence up in these hearings. Not once have they brought up any evidence. Hunter Biden agrees to come testify in front of them. And he wants to do it in public. You would think they would embrace that, the chance to expose Hunter Biden for all his criminality, but they back off of it because they don't want it in public. This is all about trying to smear Joe Biden with lies and bullshit. And when it's out in the open, they can't do that. So they're not going to go that route and ultimately be embarrassed. These are some childish, dumbass motherfuckers. The House, three House committees, Judiciary, Oversight, and Ways and Means, have struggled to produce results in their investigation. Hunter Biden was offered to appear at a hearing, but only if it could be in public. Republicans have not held any public impeachment hearings since September, when their own witnesses said they didn't have evidence to impeach the president. They had their own hearings in public, and every one of them, they were embarrassed. So they learned a lesson. Let's not have any more hearings in person. But then that leaves it open to them lying, bullshitting, exaggerating like they do. The inquiry is seen by its critics as a way to muddy the waters between Joe Biden and Trump, who stands accused of dozens of charges in various civil and criminal cases. This is what they're trying to do. They're trying to take Trump looking bad, which he will, and they're going to say, well, Biden's just as bad. Well, good luck with that. Donald Trump has 4 indictments to date, 91 felony charges, and you don't have a shred of evidence against Joe Biden. Good luck with your efforts. You're failing miserably, and you have no hope in the future that something like this is even going to work. It's pretty hilarious. It's almost like slapstick comedy for these people trying to pull something out of the air, pull something out of their ass to try to find something on Joe Biden. All the evidence of Donald Trump's wrongdoings are right there and evident in front of all of us. And when you talk to the Republicans, they go, well, we don't have evidence yet, but we know he did something. Well, that doesn't count in court. You got to have the evidence. And if you've been looking for 5 years for evidence and you haven't found anything as yet, well, you maybe have to question whether there is any evidence, whether you're just ginning this up to try to gain some ground to help out your criminal, corrupt piece of shit nominee. Speaking of him, I just want to wrap things up with one other story that's kind of fun. Former President Donald Trump, it has now been decided, can be sued for his actions he took on the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. This comes out of a federal appeals court. Trump sought to dismiss cases brought by members of Congress and police officers that were harmed in the January 6th attack before evidence is presented arguing that he acted in his official capacity as president when delivering a speech ahead of a riot. But the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals rejected Trump's preemptive dismissal request, saying he will have to prove that he was acting in an official capacity during the case. And somehow, I think he's going to have problems showing that inciting a rogue bunch of dumb fucks to disrupt an electoral certification and overthrow the country is part of his job description. I don't think he's going to have much luck with that. President Trump has not demonstrated an entitlement to dismissal of the claims against him based on president's official act immunity, the court's ruling said. The 3-0 decision was written by Judge Srinivasan, a Barack Obama appointee, Judge Gregory Katsas, a Trump appointee, issued a concurrence, and Judge Judith Rogers, a Bill Clinton appointee, wrote her own concurrence, joining only to the part with the first decision rejecting Trump's dismissal for request. So Donald Trump's going to have some more lawsuits. He's got members of Congress like Eric Swalwell, members of the Capitol Police Department that are going to sue his ass too. The only thing I would say, I would get these lawsuits done quickly, because by the time Letitia James is done with them, he ain't going to have no money. He ain't going to have anything. But the point is Donald Trump loses again. This is why when people worry about what's going to happen, Donald Trump keeps losing. The Republicans keep losing. They are failures, utter failures. They are incompetent and inept, and everything they do, everything they try, they fail. I believe in destiny, and I think what we're going to see over the next year is the absolute demise, the decimation of the Republican Party. People talk about the 2025 fascist manifesto. Oh, what's going to happen? That's scary. Well, first of all, there will be no Republican in the Oval Office in 2024, so that won't be a factor. And after the Republicans get their asses kicked in 2024, this whole strategy of Donald Trump, the fascism and stuff, they're going to have to throw it away. They're going to have to come up with a new plan, because what they've been doing and what they're planning is a failure. So that's why I don't worry about that 2025 manifesto. You're not going to have a Republican in the White House in 2024. And after they get hit by this blue wave, they're going to have to change everything. They're going to have to rehabilitate and reimagine themselves. And I don't know how they're going to do it, but it's going to take some time. It's not something you can flip in a year, 2 years, or even 4 years. The Republicans are in for a world of hurt. And as I said, as we go through this next year, they are going to be absolutely decimated. They should know it's coming, but they refuse to recognize it. So be prepared when we come up to 2024. That's going to be a bad day for Republicans and a great day for the United States of America. All right, we're going to wrap things up for the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day. I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.